All right, you can start.
Awesome. So thank you. And hey, Dereck. So God bless Dereck because I'm just going to be honest and tell everybody that we did this whole session the other day and it was kick ass. And then I messed up and hadn't recorded the sound. So now luckily we have Mal helping us out. I mean, Dereck could obviously do this in his sleep, but Suzanne, not so much. So anyways, the trials and tribulations of the pandemic. So we are thrilled to be featuring Dereck as our Meet the Maker, and obviously we're doing this all even though we're super. We live super close to one another, but we could be thousands of miles apart with technology, which is really cool. So we're featuring Dereck as our first virtual Meet the Maker, and as you can see, he is sitting in his studio, which is in his house, which is in West Bedford. So let's just kick it off and let's have you tell us a little bit about yourself and your very, very unique business and what you're doing over there.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me again.
I know, it's like Groundhog Day all over again.
Yeah.
Where?
So I'm Dereck Blackburn, and I am the owner and audio engineer at Quiet House Recording. On my website, it says Quiet House Recording as a studio for all creative people, and that's exactly what I aim to be, is something for anyone who needs creative work done in audio. They can come to me and I can help them do whatever they need to do. Voiceovers, music, audiobooks, podcasts, pretty much anything that deals with recorded sound I can do here, analog and digital. And I've been here since, the studio has been in this house since 2011, but I've been, we've been here in Bedford since 2011, but I've been here in Massachusetts on and off since 2005. So I'm very happy to be here, finally put my stakes down in the ground and to run this business, especially here in Bedford.
That's awesome. I love that. And so tell us how do people find you? So the fact that, I mean, again, if somebody didn't know where you were right now, I mean, it looks like you're in like New York City in this super cool studio. But you're right here in little old Bedford. So how do people find you, and tell us a little bit about some of your clientele and
Sure.
and then we can also launch into how you've been adapting your business for the situation.
Yes, the situation. I like that.
The situation.
So most people find me, the bands that I record, singer-songwriters that I record, they find me because I'm showing up at their performances, or I'm reaching out to them on social media because, I'm always looking for new music, and I'm always interested in recording talented people. They can also find me, of course, at quiethouserecording.com and on Instagram. Essentially, I provide a lot of different types of services. So even Google searches such as like recording studios near me, I'll pop up in those search results. Another service I provide that a lot of people might not know about is remote recording. Essentially, somebody needs to be recorded for a podcast, but they can't travel to where the podcast is being recorded, and they don't have the equipment at home to record. So they will come here. I will set up a remote recording session with the people wherever they are, and I'll record both sides of the conversation, send off my side of the audio, and then they'll piece it together. Whoever's editing it will piece it together somewhere else. I also do a lot of corporate education functions, because even though there's a lot of like wonderful companies around here, not all of them have an AV department or the facilities to record podcasts or audio for, especially executives. A lot of executives come here and they're doing either voiceovers or calls internally, or certain a lot of corporate education, like how-tos and
ratings and stuff like that.
Yeah, so it's just like, it just runs the whole gamut.
That's so cool. Yeah, and we were saying the other day on our super awesome conversation that, yeah, I mean, even a huge like, I think we mentioned like iRobot or something as an example, but some of these big companies that are so great at what they do, but it doesn't make sense for them to have like a recording studio and to have that such a specialty. And so to think that they could all just come and plug into what you already have going and take care of all those needs, and they don't have to go to Boston. I mean, I think that's what's been so striking is like the quality of what you're doing right here in Bedford and having that service to offer to all these big companies.
Yeah, it's a very controlled environment here. So it's much different than, like, let's just get a computer with a microphone and go into a quiet room and hope for the best. Like, this is a purpose built recording studio. It's properly treated, and, acoustically built for, quiet, high quality audio. So, yeah, it's definitely like a huge resource for people who know that I'm here, but it's a huge resource for those people because they don't always have access to that, in their businesses.
Yeah, it's like on demand. It's like, yep, you need that. You go there, you plug right in. And you had mentioned too that, say you're working with someone like we remember we were talking about audiobooks and how when like it could be the most incredible book in the world, but if the person reading it is talking like monotone, then you're like, okay, I'm out. It's like impossible to listen to it.
Right.
I think you said you can coach people right on like their inflection of their voice and how to make sure that they're doing things the right way.
Yeah, I have a lot of experience in theater and, of course, in voiceovers and things of that nature. But definitely, there's been a huge explosion of people doing audiobooks on their own. But all of the audiobook companies have a set of guidelines that need to be followed. Many of them are for, everything has to be clearly spoken, diction has to be almost perfect, noise level has to be, it can't go over a certain threshold. um, and a lot of people who are getting into it don't exactly have the practice or training that it takes to be able to sit and talk for 3 hours, 4 hours.
Oh yeah.
A lot of these audiobooks are over 10 hours, 15, 20 hours. It takes a lot of practice to be able to be consistent for that long period of time.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And I love I listen to a lot of things on Audible, so we'll get to our book discussions later too. But talk with Audible. I try to listen to books, like my business books on there, and then I like to have a physical book to read at night. So that's when I'll read like my fiction books. But I was telling you, I love Malcolm Gladwell, who wrote Outliers and all of those books, because he's turned his books almost, as he calls it, like sort of like a podcast. So he will read his own books and then he'll bring in, if he's interviewing a certain person in the book, he'll actually have that person read that part, or he'll bring in snippets of, if he's talking about an event, maybe like a snippet of when they were talking about it on the news or on the radio or whatnot. Bless you. And it's really cool, and it's just so engaging, and it's like I can listen to him all day long because he's got the voice for it, he's got that inflection, and he makes it so interesting too, which is really cool. So there's so many different ways that we go, which is awesome. So tell us about your journey. So what, like, when did you, like, sort of, what's like a defining moment for you when you're like, this is awesome, like I'm doing what I love, what's your background, and when did you kind of sit back and go, this is what I've always wanted?
Yeah. So I have told this story enough times to where it's like I have it down, and that is I'm extremely lucky that I grew up in an area of the country that had a really great music, theater, and arts program.
And where was
Um, this is Kankakee, Illinois.
Hey,
Uh,
hey.
yeah, Kankakee, Illinois. Um, I'm not sure exactly how it happened, but all of the schools in Kankakee County, for the most part, had really great music, theater, and arts classes from third grade on through high school. Um, I just was really fortunate to have the band directors and the leadership that I had, where I started out playing saxophone and the elementary school band, and then right around junior high, I started playing trombone and getting into the jazz band, and I would play trombone and bass guitar and jazz band, and I would play in these symphonic bands. I played in like all state symphonic bands as well. I mean, there are just so many opportunities for kids where I came from for the arts, and also the town that I'm from just had an overflowing amount of people with musical talent. So the experience that I had in school, coupled with the the people who are in town, in bands or singer songwriters, making music, just as a comparison, the area that I grew up was probably larger than Bedford. Bedford's about 13,000 people or so. Kankakee is about 30,000 people or so, and then there's two smaller towns right next to it, and then there's just corn surrounding those towns. Um, but there was just like there was a community and an economy to support the arts there, and I was just like so fortunate. There are three recording studios in town. So like bands, uh, anywhere from high school bands to established local and regional bands could record at these studios. A lot of them became friends or interned at those studios, and they all like played a huge part and an impression on me. And the there's kind of two parts to this. Like the moment when I was young, where I was like, "This is what I want to do for the rest of my life," is one of the local high schools that I did not go to had a music business elective for high school kids.
Ooh, that's so cool.
Yeah, and it was one of the small farming communities in this county, which was really strange. But it was called Comet Records because they're called the Hersher Comets, and it's probably the only time the town Hersher, Illinois, has been mentioned like on a podcast or anything like that.
Population 5.
But they had this amazing band, the school band, and they just had this offering. So the some of the students from the school band had this elective where they would find bands in the community, get them together, pay a recording studio to record those bands, and they would release a compilation of those bands and kind of learn what it took to essentially run a record label. And yeah, it was and I got into it as a band, being recorded on the compilation, but it was just an amazing experience. And I mean, it was like totally a DIY or do it yourself ethic, which I'm like huge on even now, all these years later. It was just a really like life changing experience. And just as I've gone through, I haven't always been in the music industry. I was in IT for a period of time as well, but I would do freelance audio stuff on the side. It was just a constant sort of theme in my life that I just kept getting pulled back into this, into the music industry and the audio industry. So yeah, I'm just extremely fortunate to have had that experience.
That's so cool. And it's just amazing when you think how, those experiences and things from when you're young, really do shape what you do in the future. And, to think about all the teachers that, they help to instill that love of music into kids. And in Bedford, I think we're so lucky because so I have a sixth grade daughter and a first grade son, and the teachers, the music department now seems to be really young, and they're just like the concerts they put on, just like they bring me to tears. We went to the Vertical concert. What was that? Kind of probably right before all this stuff happened, and they had every single kid up on that stage at the high school, like from all the different grades, and they all sang a song together. And they had never even practiced together in person, I believe. And it was amazing. And through this whole thing too, my daughter is able to take piano lessons through the teacher from Davis, because when she's no longer their teacher, she can be their teacher on the side for piano. And they're doing every Tuesday, they have a Zoom piano lesson together. And it's so awesome. So it is just so cool to see these teachers, getting the kids involved, and I'll hear our kids singing in the car and stuff like that. So Bedford is really awesome with their with their art, their music, and their arts. And we would love to. I mean, that I love what you just talked about too, because there are so many talented people here in Bedford. Outside the schools too, right? So like I've got a client that a dear friend, Martin Crotty, and he had an awesome band back in, I think it was like the 90s. It was called Flynn, and he's still super involved. Went to see a concert of his in Cambridge, and now his son Aiden should definitely be on your radar. I'll connect all you guys, but I
Sure.
think I forget it might be American Ink or something like that, but they're
Oh, that band.
they're amazing, and they're so young. It's just so cool. I think it'd be super awesome if somehow Bedford did something like that. So the problem right now is we don't have a good venue, right? Like we need like a bandstand or a half shell, whatever you call those things.
Yes. Band
Something, yeah, a band, exactly. And maybe like down at Springsburg Park, or I don't know, I have a couple of ideas around town where maybe we could do something. But it would just be awesome to have, like to your point, the high school band could play there. These, different people around the community could play there. We could bring people in.
Yeah.
One of our makers, we did an awesome lady from Bedford that's really involved in, she teaches art and things like that. And I met her over at the Umbrella in Concord, which is, I believe it's town funded. It's in an old school, and it's a whole art building. So they have actually art shows, and people can rent studios and things like that, like the artists. But for music, they just had Lyle Lovett there. If anybody remembers him, he was married to Julia Roberts for like a minute back in the day. But they have a theater. They just built a whole theater. It's brand new. I think there's actually two of them, and they'll do all different performances, and it's just so cool. So I think if there's a way that you and I can get together on some of this stuff, and can maybe push for Bedford to have something like that, like for music and for arts, and just a
Yeah.
space. I think you said you and Rebecca are on the. Tell me about the cultural
Well,
committee
Rebecca is on the couch, on the cultural council.
council.
Yes. So, yeah, I've been on what do we call it, the band shell bandwagon.
Yeah, the chill band. That's right.
Yeah, for the last few years, and it's just with the size of the community here and the amount of arts that goes on here with theater and music. It's like there needs to be a purpose built place in order to have that's accessible to the public.
Yeah.
You go to the town hall, you get a permit, and like you can put on a performance or something of that nature. Shakespeare in the Park, or a small festival, things of that nature. Um, because I know that the town does that now, and there's a wonderful venue sometimes on the lawn of the church. It's not always like super accessible to get there for a lot of people, and there's a lot of space, I think, that is purpose for other things that I think that shouldn't be. I think that like we need to also spend a little money and effort and time on a venue like this for the arts. Just saying again, the place where I'm from, when I grew up, had a good sized park, but it had a band shell where there were festivals, every summer, and like the public could rent it. There were performances, music, theater, art. And again, it's like a very formative part of my upbringing. I just remember being in high school, and like there's like an Amnesty International festival, which were kind of big in the 90s, and like Food Not Bombs and things like that. Like all of these kind of social gatherings, right? And we could do those same things as well. It could be like a part of like what the community. It would just be another feature of our community is to have something like that available.
Yeah, it would be awesome, and it could definitely connect all the people here within Bedford, because I remember talking to a few different people, yourself included, over the years, and it's like, wait, you don't know this person, like this dad is amazing, with his band and
There needs to be a central place for these people to go.
exactly. And to right, like with the battle of the bands, and just oh my god, it would be so much fun. And then I know, I mean, even for that concert I mentioned, the vertical, I believe that's what they call it, the vertical concert with where every grade gets to perform. There's no room. Like the high school, it's packed. There's not there people they had to like turn people away.
Right.
So, if it's something like that where either it's outside and there's plenty of room, but you still acoustically have, the band shell, right, to sort of manage that, or if it's something inside, like I don't know how many people can go to how big the theater is in Concord, but I think it's pretty decent size. So yeah, I love that idea because I think you could feature so many different people. You could connect people, and then one of our other makers, we went up to another artist client of mine, rent space in Lowell, and I am gonna forget the name of it. It's in one of the huge old mills, and he told me it's the largest enclave of artists on the Eastern Seaboard. It's incredible. So if you guys have, it's so cool, and they have Lowell Makes there too, which is a place where you can go and basically borrow different things, like you need a 3D printer or you need an instrument or you need a tool or whatnot. It's just fostering all of this creativity, and they made a little brewery there, actually not so little, it's pretty good size, but there's a brewery there, and they bring in food trucks and things like that, and they have a big space where you can have performances and things like that. So so Bedford is we're so close to everything. I mean, Lowell is like 10 or 15 minutes away.
Right down Route 3. A lot of my clients come from Lowell. A lot of bands that I record come from Lowell. And, yeah, it just makes sense. It's literally right down the road.
Yeah, there's such a strong art community there. So it's like we can bring some of that to Bedford, right? And kind of have like that nice synergy, because it's so funny, and it's so different. I know in the New England, say, compared to where you grew up, but I feel like we're so like focused on our town. It's like, oh, we're all in like our own little bubble in our little town, and it's like, well, we can all be connected on a greater degree. And I think the arts, it tends to, like, I mean, Lowell's gone through such a renaissance, and they say whenever you have the art, it's like everything else follows suit.
Absolutely. And
So
that's the one piece that Bedford needs to focus on, is a more varied, open embrace of the arts in general.
yeah, because there's so many. There's the Bedford Council. I think it's Bedford Council for the Arts, and
Yeah,
there's all these awesome people doing all these awesome things, but to have it be like in one place that is accessible, I think that's the thing, right? So
that's
if
the
you
big
have
deal.
you have a
Yeah.
physical building, or something that's just like people can walk in and see the open studios, or go list just walk in and someone's jamming and you get to witness a band practicing, or have lessons there. Oh my gosh, there could be so many. Like you could show movies. I think I was telling you when I was a kid, back to like the kind of formulative, kid years. We grew up in a very musical family. My dad played the trumpet in the Concord band forever and ever. So as a kid, we would go to all those concerts. And there's another space in Concord. 51 Walden was where the Concord band,
Oh,
I think
yeah.
they still practice and they still do their stuff there. But we would go to those concerts. And in the summertime, they play at Fruitlands out in Harvard, which is gorgeous. And then I remember 51 Walden would also show like Mary Poppins or The Music Man. And, all the kids would just go and, watch like musical production, their movie, the old Disney movies and stuff together.
Yeah.
That was cool. In fact, my mom has a child. I just had my birthday yesterday. Woo
Yeah.
woo!
Happy belated birthday.
Oh, thank you. I gotta say, it was what I think it was my best birthday yet. It was. It was really cool. Just being home with the kids and Ryan. It was really, really nice. I'm very lucky. But my mom tells the story, so I would think I was due like end of March, and I believe April 1st. So I was smart as a baby not to be born on April Fool's Day. Um, but she went to a Concord band concert that night before I was born, and she swears, like, what do you call like those big drums, like the big bass drums or whatever?
Timpanies?
Yeah. Wait, what's it called again?
Timpani?
timpani. Yeah, so she swears that when like that drum, I was like, okay, and like she went into labor like right after that. So she would always tell that story.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, it's just again to have kids have that opportunity, to hear music or look up to somebody, that started a band and is doing it, like someone like Aiden Crotty. Like he could be such an inspiration to other kids if there's a more chances for people to see him and to learn about what he's doing and like what you're doing. So another thing that's really fascinating to me is, again, we have like your professional studio right here in Bedford. And many years ago, I want to say like 8 or 9 years ago, do you remember Blue Jay Studios
Yes. Yeah. Right
in
here.
uh, in Carlisle, right down the road? So that I ended up, I can forget even how I met them, but it was one of the did we decide it was one of the Backstreet Boys or
Yeah.
somebody that
One of the Backstreet Boys on. It's had a bunch of owners, but yeah, the
yeah.
at the time when you sold, you were trying to sell it, it was owned by a Backstreet Boy.
Yeah, yep. So I had met them somehow, and we had that listed on the market, and I remember being shocked because how the thousands of times I drove by that place, like as a kid or even as an adult, I had no idea it was there. They just had that little tiny sign. It just said Blue Jay. It was like less than a foot big, probably.
Yeah.
But they had world famous artists there, and so basically when you go into Carlisle, it's subterranean, right? It's like a berm basically built into
Right.
like the side of this hill, and you don't really don't know it's there. It's next to the
It's not
Carlisle.
facing the road.
Yeah, it's so cool. So I know it was very very famous. I believe during the days of like Jay Giles bands and Aerosmith and all of that back in what like the 70s 80s, and then whenever
Right.
these guys took it over, I'm pretty sure they had some. I want to say like Rihanna was there. I forget, but I remember them
Lady
being.
Gaga, Lady Gaga recorded there.
That's
Billy
right.
Joel, Billy Joel was recorded there. There's a lot of. I did some research on that and found it was very popular for sure. And I also I've talked to the owners there fairly recently, like within the last few months, and I think that they want to return it back to a recording studio. The
So cool.
business that's in there right now is building a new building in the center of Carlisle, and I think that the idea is to move the business out of the studio and into the new building, and possibly restart the studio as kind of bring it back to its former glory. Um,
Cool. So the equipment's still in place for the most part, and
so the cabling is still there. The equipment is not.
uh,
But essentially, when I talked to them, I essentially said that I would bring my equipment over. It would be a plug and play situation. So for the most part, everything is there. When I was there, they were using it as a practice space for. I think the owner has a band and they're using it as a practice space for that function. But everything is pretty much the same as it was when they moved in. Some of the vocal booths are offices,
yeah.
and some things have been reconfigured here and there. But essentially, the control room is still the same. The
Uh,
room is still the same. And all of the functions of the studio are essentially still there. So I'm hoping that I've talked with them a few times, but I'm hoping that I'll be a part of the renaissance of that place.
oh
Uh,
my god.
in 2020 or beyond.
Yeah, that would be so cool. Because I remember, I mean, it was so famous because it was like the absolute quietest you could get, right? Because it's all underground, and just the what that I remember that
Beautiful.
like the motherboard or whatever in the middle was
Yeah,
entirely like soundproof, and
it's a beautiful studio. It's a
yeah,
beautiful studio.
it's so cool. And to me, like I just think like, oh my god, so was I like at the office and Lady Gaga's like bus went by here? Like, did she stay at the Colonial Inn? Like like all these questions because it's just
Yeah.
so cool to have it right
Well,
there.
that's funny. If I can just segue into talking a little bit about my space and why I'm here. There are a lot of studios in the area that you don't know about. There's a lot of private studios. Essentially, you know, in the last 15, 20 years, or even longer than that, people have started moving recording studios into places like their homes, basements, or bedrooms, or things like that, of course. But there's been a lot of studios that have been, kind of like shoehorned into places that you just like wouldn't, you wouldn't think that, oh, there's a recording studio here. There's,
Right.
the technology and everything has gotten to the point where it takes very little equipment uh, to actually start the studio. Like really what matters is the space, right? So, and I think that that's the thing that's really enticing about a place like Blue Jay, is because it was purpose built. No expense was spared when it was open, and it's still there. There's so many studios, and um, I'm never like big studio versus small studio. Because I need big studios still. I have freelanced at a few studios in Boston, and I need those studios because they have like a specific set of
Mhm.
spaces there, or they have equipment there that just it would be out of my reach financially to own, like 40-year-old recording consoles and things like that. So we need to keep those places going for sure. But it's really interesting how places like Blue Jay kind of fell to the wayside because of things like home recording.
Right. Yeah.
But even now, we still need places like that. Like we still need access to those places. So I'm hoping when that place comes back up that it's not a private studio, that is hopefully more of like a public or nonprofit um, sort of situation. Uh,
Yeah, that would be awesome, and it's kind of like that folklore too. I remember being there and just thinking about all the famous people that were there, and it's like kind of legendary, you know. So it's cool
sure,
to have that place to, to gravitate towards and to gather at. But to your point, I mean, it like that's would love to hear about sort of how your technology has changed, and the fact that you can do, like, you can have an amazing studio in, I mean, yours is professionally outfitted, but but talk to us a little bit about sort of how that all has changed, and the type of things that you can do, and the type of people coming to see you, and also how how have you been adapting with your technology for the situation.
sure. So, a couple of things about my studio. So, when you come into my studio, and you can see pictures on my website, but essentially, it doesn't look like a traditional recording studio because it's not really meant to be a traditional recording studio. It's more about the space and the places that we are able to capture audio. In here, it's more of a dead sound on this side of the room, and then a live sound on the other side of the room. But also, I have, like, if I'm recording acoustic instruments, I'll put players up in the living room or the kitchen, where it's a much more it's a larger, more cavernous space, and there's like a little bit of reverb up there, and it just sounds really great. And so it's a really flexible space, right? Um, of course, now when the situation happened, I had to cancel or postpone all of my in-person recording sessions for the next few months, which was, you know, at the time a couple weeks ago is devastating. I was not sure that I was going to be able to continue to provide a service, for lack of a better term. So what has happened though is I have gotten a lot of remote work, or mixing music, or recording. People are recording at home, and they're sending me their what are called stems, or the parts that they've recorded where they are, and I've kind of filled in the blanks. Either I play
Cool.
drums on their record, or I play guitar. I pretty much play like every instrument, but I play like instruments. I add instrumentation or production to their songs. With just like how we're communicating, it's the same thing. Like I can play audio through my recording system to you, either over Google Hangouts or a couple of other proprietary pieces of software where you'd essentially be listening to the same thing I'm listening to if you had headphones on.
Right.
You know, so we I've been adapting that way very much so. And again, like everything now, even though it's not in person face to face, it's 99% like this now, just like FaceTime or Hangouts or Zoom or things of that nature. And we're still getting work done, you know, and me and many of my peers are still getting work done. So, you know, for the time being, this is working out. It's working out better than I thought it would. Because I was really for a few days there at the beginning when places were starting to close down, and I was just thinking like it's too much of a mess, you know,
Yeah.
it was just too much. It was
Yeah.
just too much. So I'm very, very grateful to all of my clients who are, you know, still sending me work. And I've also adapted in other ways because I do have a little more time now. Uh, I've been doing like what are called mix critiques. So essentially, people send me mixes, like other mixing engineers send me mixes, and I listen to them and I write like a fairly detailed critique about things that I hear that they may not hear because they're kind of, you know, like really attached to the song. And I try to point out things and be helpful. I've also started teaching people online, essentially very I'm still trying to flesh this out a little bit, but essentially it's like recording things that I do, like screen recording things that I do and talking about why I'm doing this or why I'm doing that. So
I should
I've
have
come
hired you to teach me how to actually record our session the other day.
yeah, I mean
I'm here learning. No, but
yeah,
that's so cool. And that to me, what's been so remarkable about this whole thing, I think we all went through different phases, right? Like the first was like, that's, just scared and shocked and
anger, denial, and
yeah, yeah. Now I kind of think people are in this phase of like, okay, like I don't know if it's acceptance or whatnot, but it's like life
it's
is
so
going on.
adaptive.
Yeah, yeah, and people
So
are
adaptive.
it's like unbelievable. And there's been a lot of stuff in our industry, like they're trying to get a bill passed, you can like virtually notarize things, and they're doing. We had a drive-by closing today. Sounds like a drive-by shooting.
Yeah,
It's a much better outcome. But because everybody wants to stay safe, but things are still getting done. It's actually remarkable to me, and I wonder what changes will come out of this long term. Like again, realizing like, okay, you can do a piano lesson over Zoom. You could do, you can be mixing music from all, different places all over the world and never even leave your house. So it is cool to see this adaption creative phase. People just are pretty impressive.
yeah.
It's
At the end of it, I hope that people realize like how important it is, how important communities are. Communities, of course, we know how important families are because we're spending all of our time with them. But the thing that I miss the most right now are the different communities I was involved in, and like having those shared experiences with people, whether it's people coming here to record, or I'm involved in the audio engineering society, so we haven't had any meetings or events or anything, and we usually have like 100 events a year, so it's just like I'm like really missing those people as well. And I just hope at the end of this that we really like I hope that it comes to us that like that our communities are very important, and we should like be nurturing them as much as we can. You
really, yeah, yeah, it's what it's all about. And then in a tough time too, to see that community come together. And Bedford is such a great small town. Like I made up a tagline for it, but I was like, it's a what I say, a small community with a huge heart, because
yeah,
I'm always amazed at what the power. Like right now, we've got this whole thing going on, where we're having people donate. Most of it's financial. They're donating money, and then we're taking that money from the fund, and we're going to local restaurants, because we want to make sure that those restaurants are able to continue their business as much as possible.
right. Yeah, I
And then
think we donated some money to the cause as
I
well.
thank you. I really appreciate it. Yeah, it's been.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking the initiative to make that happen.
Oh my, well, my honestly, and I feel like it's almost like a little bit selfish because it's helping me. Like I'm staying busy, I'm feeling purposeful. And like I just like a little while before we got on this, we had Pressed Cafe over in Burlington brought to the Bedford VA and to Newton Wellesley. And like someone I don't know, like this head nurse at Newton Wellesley called me like almost in tears. And she was like, "This is awesome. Thank you so much." And so just to be able to make that impact. And then again, it's helping the restaurants and it's helping the people. And
That's
people
so
want
great.
help, and I think especially like a small town like Bedford, it's, I don't know, people really look out for one another. And it's pretty cool. So
Yeah.
on that, the communities and whatnot, tell me about, I saw you post something a while ago about there's a space above, I call it Gammies, over there, North Side Convenience, Dunkin' Donuts, etc. Affectionately known as Gammies back in the day. But is that with the Audio Engineers Society, or what's there?
So that is it's a separate business. It's called the New England Synthesizer Center, and
Okay.
essentially it's a storefront and online service where in the last 40 years there's essentially been this thing for modular synthesizers, and a lot of them are DIY, make it yourself. You have to have a bit of mechanical um, knowledge, a little bit of electrical knowledge. You got to know how to put things together. But essentially, they are a storefront that sells these modules for modular synthesizers. And they just opened, I think, a month or two ago. They were online only. The website was synthcube.com, synthcube.com. And now they have a store over there. Of course, you can't go over there right now, but they had an opening celebration there a couple of months ago, and the place looks great. And essentially, I think it's the entire top floor above the gas station. But they're the next people that you should, or one of the next people that you should definitely talk to.
I would love that.
They
Yeah, connect me.
they're making stuff over there.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, and I would love to I guess a kind of a spin-off of because Meet the Makers is anybody that's kind of like a mover shaker in the community, or doing something unique. But a lot of them have been artists, and it'd be super cool to have, maybe you and me could kind of go off on a thing, and we could be specifically focusing on the musical component of that, right? So like a place like that, or an artist that, musician, or even like, one of the teachers in the schools, or anybody like that. It would be really cool to have a whole separate series.
Yeah, parents are going to maybe not like me for saying this, but as far as STEM education goes, there's nothing better than a high school student who has that disposition for electronics or interest in electronics and music, to get them a starter kit on, like, something to make noise with, because it's literally like they give you a PCB. I can actually I'll pull out an example here. So, a lot of the stuff here in my studio I made myself. About 80% of it is all stuff that I have made
That's so
myself.
cool.
And this is a bit of an example. I'm not sure how well this is showing up on the camera,
Yeah, I
but
can see like little circuits and stuff.
yeah. So this came from a kit, and the kit was this printed circuit board and these components, and essentially you just assemble it and solder it on your own. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about that's going on over there. Is instead of these sorts of things, they're actually like modules, but they're fairly easy to put together. They are a great resource as well. The people there will be endlessly helpful in supporting their product. But for high school, I mean, I wish I had this in high school. I had that disposition, but this wasn't as mature as it is now. It's just really a great hobby for young people to get into.
That's so cool, and that brings me back to a child, like total childhood memory of mine, because my dad that I mentioned, he actually he was I can't tell you all these stories, but he was in a band at Tufts. He played the drums. back in the day, and they had a ton of fun. So he was always into the trumpet and the drums and all that. And then he's a electrical engineer. So and then I had a brother who sadly passed away, but he was also an amazing musician. Played the drums, played the violin, played the piano. He was the coolest. But I remember as a kid, because they were both so into that, like, so that was like all over my basement, what you
Yeah.
just showed me, things like that. And I remember as a kid, we would go in the minivan to my dad always called it U Blue Electronics, but you do it electronics down in Norwood or wherever.
Yeah.
I would sit in the van, probably doing God knows what, reading or something to entertain myself, and they would be in there for like an hour, and they
Yeah.
would get all those different parts, and they would put together all these cool different things. And I remember getting the first like drum machine, like that, and then like they would, yeah. Oh, I got to introduce you
Oh,
to my
great.
dad, 'cause,
Yeah.
he would love that. He would love that the synth cube that you talked about.
Yeah. She retired.
So he was he worked at Hewlett Packard for a long time, and then he kind of did early retirement. And he lives down the Cape now, and he does real estate appraising down there, sort of part time. But for the most part, yeah, he's retired. But he plays in a oh, I'm gonna mess it up. But he plays in a band down there, but it's more. I'm not gonna think it's not jazz, but it's cool. And I'll bring the kids down there to go see him play, and it's like a
That's great.
not a chorale, but something like that. But anyways, but yeah, you just totally brought me back to those memories and like tinkering and all that kind of stuff. And it'd be so cool to somehow, maybe it could start off by being offered through Bedford Rec, right? Like there's a
Right.
class where kids could go to the synth cube. They could go to their space. So they pay. It's you
Right.
pay for the class, but we could try to get them more involved in the town and in the high school, because you're right. There's such a big STEM presence here. There's so
Yeah.
many different avenues. And what I've thought was cool was whenever people try to get girls involved in stuff that used to, like when I was a kid, it was like, oh, the boys do that. It's like, nope, not anymore. Like girls are just as into those kind of
Absolutely.
things. So I love that idea. So that would be fun when this is over. You and me, we'll go get our dunks, go up to the synth cube, and meet them and feature them. I think that would be super cool.
That's great.
So I would like to hear about music. So I was telling you, like kind of some of your stories, and we all have like our couple of brushes with maybe somebody that we met or whatnot. One of mine, I think I told you, was that one of my clients, well, first clients way back in the day, he was the sound guy. We used to call him the sound guy for Meatloaf. So that was cool. I never got to meet Meatloaf or anything, but I always thought that was neat, just to kind of have that like 2-degree separation. And then my other story was back speaking about my parents and being a kid and stuff. We were in Hawaii. I was probably like 20 years old, and we were in this little tiny store in Maui. And I'm like, I look over, I'm like, oh my god, like that's Steven Tyler. And my parents, who went to school in Boston and love music, were like, who? I'm like, Steven Tyler, Aerosmith. And my dad's like, Aero who? I'm like, okay, forget it, forget you, never mind. I'm like, I gotta go say hi to this guy, because I'm gonna regret it for my whole life if I don't say hi to Steven Tyler. So he's like smoking a stogie, like, he's not that much taller than me from what I remember, but he was super cool. And I just go up to him and I go, hey, Mr. Duxbury, because I thought he lived in Duxbury. He goes, oh, it's Mashfield. I'm from Mashfield. I'm like, all right. I'm like, oh, Boston. And we took a cute picture together. He's got his arm around me with like his giant stogie and whatever. So he was super cool. So that's my little brush. But you must have a million stories. So do you have a couple of favorite things that have
I
happened?
I wish I had a million stories, honestly. I have a few. Um, you know, I don't think I've told you this story, but when I lived in Chicago, there used to be this goth club called Neo, and my roommate, who's been the subject of another story that I told you, my
Yeah.
roommate was a bartender there, and I remember going down there one night. Now, goth clubs, I'm sure, like everybody remembers that time period of their life. Everybody's wearing black, right? But at that time, I wanted to go to this goth club to get Bill, and I wore all white. I wore white pants and a white hoodie, and like I was all white, and I thought it was like hilarious, whatever. So I go into the club, and I see Bill at the end of the bar, and I see this like kind of shadowy figure. I'm not sure if this is like going to like jive with a lot of your viewers here, but essentially, he was like, Dereck, I want you to meet my friend here. And like, he was just like very dark. He had this huge hat on and all dark leather all over or whatever. I'm like, like put my hand out to shake his hand, and he like lifted his head up. And it was Al Jorgensen from Ministry, which was like a
Oh, yeah.
fairly well known industrial band from Chicago. And I'm a huge fan of any music from Chicago. Honestly, like it was everything I grew up. I grew up on Ministry as well, and I was essentially like I thought it was so funny. I was coming into this goth club with this huge white ensemble, and here I am like meeting Uncle Al, and I'm just like, oh my god, I was like so embarrassed. There was another story I told you about Peter Steele from Typo Negative, where I was coming home to we live in an apartment, as you do when you're 20 years old with like 4 or 5 other people, and Bill had told me like he was having a friend come over for like a to stay the night or whatever, and he was gonna sleep on the couch, and like if I see somebody on the couch, then like that's
So it's not an intruder. It's actually a
right,
guest.
exactly.
Yeah.
We know what it is. So like I walk in the front door, and the lights are all off, and there's somebody definitely sleeping, snoring on the couch. And we had a fairly good sized couch, I remember, but like the guy was laying down, and his head was over one arm of the couch, and his feet like up to his mid, like his the middle of his leg, not quite to his knee, but probably just about. Like his feet were just right over. I think I might have hit his feet when I opened the door, actually. And I was just like, "Who in the heck is this?" Like
Giant on the couch.
this gigantic human being, right? So I was just like, whatever, and I went to my room, slept, and I woke up the next morning and I came into the kitchen. There's Peter Steele, who's 6 foot 11, I believe. Um,
That's crazy.
he had,
And was he like, because I typo negative, and I'll tell the story in a minute of how we even started talking about them last time because it's hilarious. But so he's like all like goth, right? And like whatever, but like almost 7 feet tall of it. Like
yeah,
I can't even picture.
yeah, he's just this gigantic, kind of ominous looking guy, but he was like a super sweetheart. He's just like the nicest person, like great conversation, or whatever. But he's standing at the stove, towering over the stove, like flipping eggs over. It's just it was the strangest scene. The
What's
strangest.
that Us magazine like stars? They're just like us. They sleep on the couch. They make eggs.
Yeah,
And that song. So we started talking about this last time because I was asking you kind of like what's on your playlist, which I want to get to in a minute too. Like what's some of your favorite music and whatnot. And I
right.
pulled up my own Spotify because I was like, I'm super eclectic when it comes to music. Like it could be like folk or it could be classical, anything. I just love pretty much all music. And I'm like, oh, look at this. I'm like, it's so funny. I have like Mad Star. We talked about Heather Nova, another awesome lady from the 90s. And then I had Typo Negative, that song, Black Number One, or what, I don't remember the name of it, but because that was that was like high school for us. Like I remember driving around Bedford, like, that was blaring. We thought we were so cool. And so I happened to bring that up, and I happened to mention that song, and then Derek's like, oh, yeah, that guy slept on my couch. And he's a giant. That was so. And did he pass away?
He did pass away.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's sad. That's really
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah.
But what was so tell us. I know some people might be surprised at some of your favorite music is. So tell us like what's your jam?
Yeah, so it's when I was growing up, I was a huge fan of Smashing Pumpkins just because I played guitar, and I absolutely I loved that band. Like that was probably my favorite band for a very long time. And then another someone else that I really love. His name is Richard Buckner. He's kind of like a it's I don't know what to put him in. He used to be called roots music, but it's essentially roots kind of Appalachian country in a way. Like singer songwriter is usually the easiest way to describe it, but it's
What's his name again?
Richard Buckner.
Write
Richard,
this down.
yeah, Richard Buckner. Oh my God, anything that he makes, anything that he's put out is just absolute gold. Um, so and also I listen to a lot of like what other people. I don't want to say I'm not a music snob at all. Like I just love all kinds of music. But I do listen to a lot of like kind of abrasive, noisy stuff, like some punk, some electronic stuff or whatever. But when I'm listening to music for my own enjoyment, because it is my job and I love my job, but sometimes it gets a little, when you're listening to the same song 300 times in a week, like it's not, you know what I mean? It's just like,
Take the luster out of it.
right, exactly. So a lot of the stuff that I'm into, like just as a snapshot now, like I'm really into this pop artist, Charlie XCX. She's from the UK. She just released a record, a self-titled record recently. And it's just like really high energy. And like there's a song that she has, it's called 1999, where it's very nostalgic. It's like, I wish it was 1999, driving around in my car and like how easy it was then, and you know what I mean. So there's like it's high energy, like not bubblegum, but like very sweet and like just like a really great beat, and I really like her. And then like there another band that I've really gotten into, like thanks to some people who've come through there through here, like they've toured with them, is a band from Chicago called Beach Bunny.
Beach Bunny. Cool.
Yeah,
I'm taking notes on all this.
yeah, Beach Bunny. I made a Spotify playlist of all this stuff. I think I sent it to you, and if not,
Oh,
I'll send it to
awesome.
you again.
Okay, I thought it was. I need to dig deeper into it. For some reason, I thought it was just that one Charlie song. So that's
Oh,
thank you.
the 2 hour, yeah, 2 hours and 1 minute thing. So yeah, so
Tonight.
Beach Bunny, they're like a Chicago indie rock band, just like really great. The young woman who is fronts the band, she's like an amazing writer, really catchy, infectious melodies, easy to listen to. And then like I've recently gotten to singles by a band called Joseph. It's three sisters. They're a lot like First Aid Kit, who I'm sure you've probably heard around the office.
Thais got me into them. I love that. Yeah.
Exactly. So this is in that same sort of vein of music, just really great. And Vampire Weekend, their last album was like nominated for a Grammy, and I mean, like the the it was a there were a lot of really great albums for nominated for album of the year, but like this was like such a great record,
So cool.
very much like a Paul Simon Graceland sort of throwback
Uh,
feeling.
I'm going to play.
Yeah, exactly. And I put a song of theirs on here called Stranger, where it's just I don't know the way that they write songs. It's just it's again it's a little bit of that nostalgic feeling of like I've heard this, or it's not like I've heard this before, but I've been here before. Like when a song makes you think about a place where you've been. Like I'm really into that kind of stuff. And
That
I just
brings me right back, like because we were talking about like remember we talked about Nana Cherry, um, that
yeah,
song is
you're thinking about Buffalo Stance.
yeah, and like that. Oh my god, like you hear that, it just brings me right back to that was probably like middle school or something, but it just a song can just bring you haven't heard it in forever, and like because I love Spotify too because it's I'll go down a rabbit hole, right? Because I'm like, it'll remind me, like Heather Nova. I hadn't heard that name in 25 whatever years. And then it played one of her songs, and I was like, oh my god! And then I start digging, what else is in there? And I just love how they'll bring stuff to the forefront, or you'll find new artists on there that you never would have explored
Yeah.
before. So it is music. It's so incredible.
And if I could just mention like a couple of the bands that I've recorded who are local, there's a band from Lowell called Greenpeace.
Oh,
I've recorded an EP with. One of the songs was nominated for Song of the Year in the New England Music Awards.
no way.
I produced that and recorded that with them. I'm really proud of that single and that EP. Another band I'm working with right now, Mint Green. They're from Boston. They're like melodic indie rock. They have a couple songs that are coming out soon. and then another group that I worked with recently, husbands. In fact, I've had a partnership with the songwriter Zach Page in that band for at least the last 3 years, going on 4 years now. So
Awesome.
like those are all local people, and they're all linked on my website as well. Like everything I've recorded here is on playlists on my website. And I gotta mention them, and then another band from Weymouth called Kipsy, who has a couple singles that are coming out. I'm actually working on one of his singles right now. Actually, all day yesterday and today, I've been working on that. So
That's so
uh,
cool. Real
kind of
time, real local, and now that song will always remind you of the pandemic 2020, you know? That's so cool. And they could all come to our bandstands, you know?
absolutely, I know. A bandstand and a showcase of all the local bands that regional bands that I recorded.
Oh, that'd be so awesome. I
Yeah,
love it. So let me finish up with a couple more questions. What is I love the book question. So, what is a great book that you are reading or have read recently that you can share with us?
sure. So I actually have the book here with me. It's called The Longing for Less,
Ooh.
and it's by Kyle Shaka. And it's one of the most beautiful books I've ever put in my hands. It's got this really beautiful jacket on it, and all of the font or typeface that they use is just really pretty. But essentially, it's about the emotionality of minimalism in our lives. So it's not about like how to like, you know, ask yourself if this sparks joy or
What's her name? Marie Kondo or whatever. Does this
right.
bring? Does that microphone bring you joy? Yeah.
Yeah, yes, this
Yeah.
a lot of good.
This is my favorite. Yeah.
Um, but it's essentially about how the quest for minimalism has kind of gotten into our society and how we react to that and how we've brought minimalism into our lives. And it's more interesting than you might think if you're just like, well, minimalism is a fad or a trend or something, and it's just kind of like something that's here. And but this book goes a lot deeper than that because it's focusing on how minimalism and the quest for living with less kind of affects us emotionally. I'm very into ever since last year. I had a high blood pressure scare, so I've been doing a lot of meditation, and in that sort of um, that change of my lifestyle of meditating three times a day, I've gotten like much more into minimalizing the amount of noise in my life, and I think that's why I resonate so much with this book is because this is definitely about like everybody's um, journey into less noise. So it's a great book on its own. Anyway, so
That's awesome. And I feel like it's kind of timely now too. You know what I mean? Because it's like we all just sort of look back and adjust and realize, oh, these other things, where like, I was talking to a friend this morning and we're like, man, like it makes you realize how hectic the pace of everyday life is. Like there's just so much
absolutely.
constantly going on. And now you're forced to pause and it's like, oh, there's a lot of beauty in that, in minimal, like time, I guess too, right? Like we're all getting time back and it's right. I mean, it's been awesome. Like we're, cooking dinners at home and just spending time as a family, and
Oh my God,
it's cool. So,
how much have you been cooking? Have you been cooking up a storm? Like this is like my break from cooking.
are you a good cook?
I am. I'm a very good cook, and my
I'm
wife
good.
is also a very good cook. But it's just like now that we're here all the time, it's like cooking breakfast, okay, cooking lunch, okay, and then I got now that we're done with lunch, I have to prepare for dinner. It's just been it's just crazy. Like
Yeah,
not going out or anything like that, and just like always, it's great being more focused on meals and what we're eating and things like that. But oh my gosh, the amount of cooking.
It's like a full-time job. And it is. So my quick story is I actually went to college for hotel and restaurant management.
Oh yeah.
But I'm a horrible cook. Like we would have these super intense, like 8-hour food labs where you basically cooked an entire. You would have a you. It was just like what you talked about with the kids in your high school that in the neighboring town. Basically, like we would run a restaurant for a day, and you had to cook everything from scratch. And then one person was a manager. It was so cool. But like nobody ever wanted me on their team because they're like, oh, like Suzanne, oh, she's really not.
I'm sorry.
So I'm really not very good at cooking. That's why I didn't go into the restaurant business because people gave me great advice and they're like, if you want to own a restaurant and your sous chef calls out, you're the sous chef. And I'm like, oh dear God, like the restaurant would completely fail. But I love hospitality. Yeah, we've been cooking a lot, and what I'm finding is it's almost like, do you ever have that sort of renaissance in your adulthood? Like I tell myself I'm a really bad cook because I think back then I just didn't have the patience for it. And now, when forced to, like, I've actually given myself a little pat on the back because I've made some pretty good stuff and trying to find things that the kids also like. I think it's like I'm learning that I'm actually not that bad. I just never gave myself the time and the
Yeah.
patience to do it. And quite frankly, yeah, when it goes back to the whole crazy normal life we live, it's like I don't. I guess it's not a priority. I've never made it a priority.
I was
Um,
never a good cook until we had a baby.
yeah, you're forced to.
Again, another period of time where life slowed down and like changes had to be made. And yeah, and then I went from not knowing when a chicken breast was done to feeling exactly when it was done. You just start and like, oh, that's been there long enough. Have that intuition now.
Yeah, yeah, like, exactly. Like through that practice, you get better and better, and you get more confident, and then you try, trickier things and all that. And I
Yeah.
love, I mean, the back, like kind of like the whole hospitality and restaurants and all that. But there's just something, whether it's with your family or whoever, but there's something so just engaging and to have that experience of food together. So we've had, like we used to love having people over, and again we wouldn't cook a huge elaborate meal, but like my husband makes a really good chicken parm, and we would just have another couple kind of sitting at the island in the kitchen and be cooking and talking and having a glass of wine, and there's something just so awesome about that. So I definitely miss that, but it's been fun. Like my 12-year old's quite the little baker, so that's been dating
Oh my God. Awesome.
brownies and all sorts of, like, Ryan's like, no more sugar. It's like making all these things, but that's been good for her. She's having fun with that.
That's great.
Um, do you have like a favorite recipe or anything you can share with us?
No, I have a favorite device. Of
Ooh,
course, because of my Midwestern upbringing, it's the crock pot. I mean,
nice.
my wife says that my wife is the queen in her. Well, and she talks about her mother as the queen of the one pot, like just everything in a pot, and like somehow dinner was like made right. Well, that's how I am with crock pot. I just know the like three or four things to put in the crock pot for 3 hours, and then like it's all done. Like
And
you know,
it's so awesome because I love that when I have my act together and could get something going in the morning, and then when you walk in the door at night and it's like, oh, it smells so good and it's done and
yeah.
it's easy, and
my
that's
favorite my favorite thing is like, for example, like yesterday I made chicken breast with onions, uh, red and yellow peppers, and garlic. But I used one of those they're like enchilada sauce recipe or enchilada sauce
packet.
packet essentially. So you put everything in. You brown the onions and the garlic and the peppers, and then you put in the chicken until it's done, and then you put in the packet of the enchilada sauce. My wife doesn't like black beans in there, but if I could, I would just put black beans in there. And then you cook that, and then you take everything out. But what you leave in makes black bean soup the next day.
Wicked smart.
You know what I'm saying?
Look at you, like
I
that.
bring that same efficiency into my professional work as well, people. So
That's awesome. Bringing it all together, keeping it real. I love it. Well, this has been awesome. I feel like there's like a million more things I wanted to talk to you about, but so I love our idea of trying to do this more often too, right? Like, so let's think
Yeah,
about who we can bring on, who we can feature, how we can get some stuff, going in the Bedford community, to get some of these artists together. I mean, it could be something as simple as, we always do our super fun client party. And I apologize to all the neighbors because you can't drive down the street that day, but everybody's been super nice and gracious about it. But we always have a live band there. And I'm like, and I thought about what if we did like a battle of the bands during that? Like there's people congregated, there's a great backyard, and something as simple as that to taking it to a higher level. So let's keep the ideas going. And
someday farm stock.
yeah,
Someday stock.
I love it. Or my team would joke and call it Sousa Palooza. Yeah.
It's a
I,
revelation.
I think that might have been Thais's idea too. I gotta give her credit.
It's
But
so,
right, that'd be pretty fun. So better days certainly to look
yeah,
forward to this
absolutely.
summer when we can all get back together. And so tell us again how people can find you on the web and on social media.
So you can find me at quiethouserecording.com. If you want to get in touch with me, there's a contact form there. Pretty much everything I've worked on in the last, however many years is there. I try to keep it updated as much as I possibly can. Also, most active on Instagram at Quiet House Recording. That's pretty much I am updating that as I work as well because there's like a huge community of audio and music people and musicians and people sharing. I'm pretty much documenting my work every day on there. And it's just been such a great resource and a way to like kind of bring people who are interested in my service like kind of closer and to see like what it's like working with me, and things of that nature. So Instagram or my website, those are the places to find me.
Awesome. All right. So let's hope you get some cool new connections out of this. Hopefully everybody's at
Absolutely,
home.
I'm ready.
They're going to be watching and learning about it, and it's just so cool to think it's right. You're right here. You're right in Bedford. Real quick, and then I'll let you go. But we didn't get to talk about your house, and obviously, I'm in real estate, and I have had the pleasure of visiting you at your house, and it's incredible. You guys have made the coolest, like it's such a contemporary, unique house. So tell us real quick, and then I promise to let you go. But tell us quickly about all the you basically redid the whole house, right?
So when we moved back to Boston, we had been moving around for a little bit for work and things like that. When we moved back into the Boston area, we were looking like in Wayland and Sudbury for places, and my wife Rebecca had happened to find this place, where we live now, and like it was the price was good, the neighborhood was great, and like the school.
Neighborhood's awesome.
Yeah, the neighborhood, well, of course, yeah. And we just, we came here in January and like braved 30 inches of snow in the yard, like just fell in love with it. And we were moved in by April, I think April of 2011. And then a couple of years later, our intention was to redo just the kitchen. But as we started with the kitchen, we just realized, it was like that rehabilitation creep. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
to the living room and we do this. And we just ended up, we didn't change anything with the bones of the house, but we essentially stripped everything away. Um, Pardon me. We stripped everything away. We redid the kitchen, the bathrooms, the bedroom. We moved our bedroom from the top floor over into the in-law apartment over the garage and turned that into a whole kind of master suite. Really like extensive amount of work that I never ever ever want to go through again.
And now you don't have to, because I mean it is so cool. It's such a striking house, and the kitchen, everything. It's very unique, and I feel like it's a perfect setting and a backdrop for what you're doing, because you have your studio, and you walk out of that and you're in this like super cool modern kind of unexpected New England house. It's really cool. So maybe we could eventually get a couple pictures to share. wasn't
Yeah,
wasn't
I have
your
some pictures that I'll share.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Because yeah, that I would love to have that visual for people. So On that note, Dereck, thank you so much. Let's plan to talk again. Let's plan to get
Yeah,
SynthTube together. And we'll be in touch about that and all these other things. And thank you so much for your time and your patience and for talking to me again. And
anytime.
now we've got it down though. So good.
We
All right.
do.
Thank you. And thanks, Mel, for coordinating this. Mel's our awesome marketing guru. So thank you both and have a lovely weekend and tell
Yeah,
Rebecca I said hi.
I will. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Thanks again.